Welcome to Just Hair Me Out, a podcast about love, life, and hair. I'm Barbara. I've spent over 38,000 hours coloring hair.
Hi, I'm Demetra, and I've spent over 1,000 weeks with scissors in my hands.
With 50 clients a week in our chairs and 22 years on our feet, doing hair is not our hobby, it's our hustle. We've navigated salon politics and then opened salon suites of our own in 2020. We choose dogs over kids, skinny marks over beer, and we've only fired 3 clients each. Welcome back to Just Hair Me Out. Today, yay, we have Demetra back.
Hey.
The better half of the podcast. Camera down. I'm talking about Gen X opinions, so I got my Nirvana shirt on. And if we want to talk generational differences, that's going to be a whole episode on its own. But, okay, I wanted to talk to Demetra about gender because this is such a big topic these days and things are shifting. So I want to start out by saying, I don't know if everybody really understands this, that gender and sex are different. And then sex has 2 different meanings, right? The noun or the verb.
Correct.
So gender, just so that we're all on the same page with the language, is really a cultural construct, which is why a lot of Gen X people are just kind of like, what? With the whole binary thing going on. I would also really like to know where the word tomboy went to. It just disappeared because that's what I am. And back in the day, it meant you are a woman or a girl and you like being a girl, but you don't necessarily do yourself up all the time, or you're like happy to get dirty and do sports. To me, it seemed a little bit more balanced than just, you know, I'm a girl, I want to wear dresses and makeup all the time.
Right. Yeah.
So by definition, gender is a societal and cultural differences rather than biological. And so which is why, of course, you know, on your driver's license and at the doctor, they want to know your sex at birth, just because those chemicals mean so much, you know, the chemical differences with the hormones of whether your same tissues turned into ovaries or testicles, to be blunt. And also there's this other issue with gender being like a subclass within grammar where, you know, the regular grammar rules, I don't know if I'm saying all these words properly, but, you know, noun, pronoun, verb, adjective. Okay. And then within all the Romance languages, for any of us who study other languages, European ones, Italian, French, Spanish, Portuguese, they all have like gendered nouns. You know, like something like a chair might be technically a feminine.
Yeah. Actually, that's like my name.
Oh, yeah, because it would be like Dimitri or Dimitro. Like I just know in a lot of languages, O or I is male.
Right. Or A. A is female, like Demetra. That's my name, right? Demetra, Dimitri. And it's based on male, female. And it's not just the names. Like you said, it goes into other things. It's male, female. And you could be talking about the same thing, like you said, a chair. But believe it or not, there's a male or female chair.
Well, or yeah. I mean, and some things
I don't know how to explain it, but the way you pronounce it.
Yeah. And I think it's not even, I don't think anyone in this day and age is ever thinking and getting mad about, like, why is a chair feminine in Italy? Like, it just kind of is, which is, you know, and if you're learning, it is kind of difficult because we're not as used to it in American English. Right. But, you know, it'd be almost the same as somebody coming over here and saying, I don't got no work today. And you're like, what? Like, it just doesn't sound right.
Right. Yeah.
So, and I understand that non-binary means outside the boundaries of male, female, which is a cool concept, but
okay.
I don't really know if non-binary is, I kind of think it means gender and not sex, because sex is more scientific and biological. Okay. This is enough to make your mind go crazy. This is 2024, and a lot of us who are 40 plus have a real hard time not making mistakes when we're supposed to say they, them. So give us a little break, a little grace. Our brains are getting older. But Demetra, I wanted to tell you about this.
Yes.
I think I only learned about this like maybe 10 years ago, that blue and pink, the whole female male thing, it actually started in 1918. And at that time, it was like it's marketing, really. And blue was female and male was pink.
Really?
And I read that the thought was that pink is like a version of red, and that would be more of a male thing, like energy. The color red is supposed to inspire action, I guess.
Oh.
Well, I mean, I've heard that over the years. Like when you look into using colors for logos or, you know, right down to the psychology of color and like how they paint hospitals certain colors to make you calm, things like that.
Right.
So, and the feminine being blue was more like, you know, the color of the sky or the ocean, and it's like calming. And in the 1940s, they switched it.
Why?
Not totally sure. Not totally sure. But here's the point. Also, like certain, you know, really famous celebrities back in the day really solidified the blue and pink thing. And I think where I'm going with this is I just find it really interesting how there were times in history where they created the binary. Like, I don't think we're naturally so binary.
Okay.
It's more of a social construct. And people these days are trying to, you know, get rid of all those differences and have non-binary, which is technically, I think, just everybody. Anyway.
Yeah. So in reality, it was created at some point, switched because they feel they can switch it. Now in this younger generation, they're rolling with it. And in reality, it doesn't even matter.
Exactly.
It's really nothing.
It doesn't mean anything.
It doesn't really mean shit. Your anatomy is your anatomy if we're going to talk about science.
Yeah.
Born male, born female. It just is what it is. That's why on your go to your doctors or whatever it is you're filling out that's going to be related to your body, you still have to say if you're male or female originated because, again, hormones. So however you want to be called, it doesn't really matter.
And really, if someone
stop confusing me, people, okay? Just stop confusing me. Like, that he, she, them, it, fuck. I was so horrible in school in English, and now I'm like,
I know.
Flashbacks. I'm like getting traumatized, PTSD. I'm like, I was a math and science student, okay? Like, I don't even know where to put my commas.
All right. Okay, but listen to this.
Yeah.
The main reason. Oh, and when I said certain celebrities, one of them being Marilyn Monroe, showing up in bright pink all the time. But was that 50s?
Yeah.
60s? Anyway, I digress.
Okay.
All this is from marketing strategists, even back in the day, because before there was that someone assigned colors to genders or to sexes, that babies always wore white because, and this makes total sense, they would get super dirty all the time and you could bleach the white clothes.
So it just didn't even matter. Right.
So it comes down to marketing because, just like everything, especially in America, they wanted people to have to buy 2 sets of clothes. Like, so if you happen to have a kid of a different gender, you can't dress them in blue. Or, you know, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, right.
And
money. Money. That's what it comes down to, people.
And it's only people in, I would say, like, original English-speaking people. So, like, parts of Europe that are more England English, and America. And other than that, people don't have these weird gender roles. Anyway, in America, I feel like you really have to step back because everything is about money. Everything. So if something doesn't seem fair or right, or you're like, that doesn't make any sense, why do all girls wear pink? It's about money.
Right. Yep.
So I also wanted to bring up how the word sex is used. You know, it's funny how in the English language, words mean often like 4 different things. Like, as in the sense of if it's a noun or an adjective. Like stomach, the word stomach to a lot of people means the organ that is your stomach. That's like, you know, below where your heart is technically and above your intestines. And other people say my stomach hurts, and that means anywhere below the breast area and above like your groin area. Like, is that whole area is like your stomach or your belly. Do you know what I mean? Language can sometimes be tricky.
Very tricky.
And the English language picture means 17 things. Anyway, I digress.
17? I don't want to know what they are because I'm not going to remember anyway, so.
I'm exaggerating, but I mean, like, you pour water out of the pitcher, you take a picture. There's just a lot of different. Oh, it's also somebody that throws the ball in a sport. Granted, some of them are spelled slightly different, but when you're speaking, like, how it would take a while to catch on to all those. You have to look at the context someone's talking in to know what they mean. So this leads me into 90 Day Fiancé. Have you seen this show?
No.
Highly entertaining. Sometimes the people are so in need of a therapist that it makes you feel like you really, really have your shit together.
I definitely need to watch it.
But I mean, it's tricky. I mean, certainly some, or maybe even half of the couples that are on this reality show are, probably really appropriately so. I mean, they're okay with not knowing each other super, super well and getting married, but it seems like they're really in it for all the good reasons and all that. But some of the cultural differences are so crazy. And you're like, what are you even thinking?
I personally think that really matters. I think when you're so different culturally from someone, I don't think it can work. I really don't. You're just so different. And, or maybe maybe I don't have any patience, but I just can't.
Well, it's hard enough to communicate with someone and have them really understand you and everything about you when you're both completely fluent in the same language. And I'm sure it's possible, but it seems impossible to me to be as fluent in a language you learn than the one you grew up with. Unless you grew up with two, in which case that ship has sailed for me. So, that's where it is. Just in case anyone listening hasn't seen or heard of this show, 90 Day Fiancé is where there's people, it's not like a mail order bride situation. It's like people meet from traveling or online dating or even through Facebook, just these social media things. And then they decide they want to be together and they have to get married, whether they want to or not, in order to bring someone to America. And so they have this 90-day visa, and it's called like a fiancé visa. So you have to already be engaged. And once you get this visa, which I'm given to understand is about $5,000, then you can bring your fiancé to the States, and you have 90 days to either get married or they need to go back home. And if they go back home, they are most likely not coming, or you'd have to apply for the visa all over again, which takes quite a while. Because as we know these days, it doesn't matter if you're married to get citizenship pretty much anywhere. Well, definitely in America. So like once you get married, you'd be applying for a green card. So it's just the first step. But anyway, some of these people like don't even speak each other's languages. Like they barely do, which is like shocking to me. I can't even believe it. Also, there's this like underlying theme that America is the best country and everyone really wants to be here. And being raised by a Canadian, think that's a mistake to think that way.
Yeah, but they don't know. You just see land of opportunity and people come and, you can come here with nothing and make it. Whereas in other countries, that's not so. So they just think of, coming here that it's going to be easy.
Yeah. I think what I was thinking of when I was talking just now, though, is like the American person. Or the American people's families. Because sometimes, I mean, granted, if you're coming from somewhere that is technically third world status, of course it's going to be a step up. But there are plenty of countries in the world that are just as civilized as America, and we're not necessarily better than other people. It's just, I want to say money versus quality of life. So America is the best place to be if you really want to make a lot of money, because money is valued so much. And then it's like in every part of our culture is make money and work. Whereas I've talked to plenty of people who've lived in or are from countries where, well, pretty much besides ours, like all over Europe, they value more than money, quality of life and having a peaceful life. Yeah.
It's time. They value time more than anything.
Yeah. Or like happiness or contentment, which also filters into healthcare. That's a whole other topic. This is interesting. So because my mom is Canadian, grew up in Canada, my brother and I were both able to get dual citizenship.
Oh, nice.
And my brother, I mean, he wasn't like trying to do this, but he actually married a woman who's Canadian. So she had to get her a green card after they got married and all that. So I didn't realize exactly how difficult it is until I saw that happening. But I hear so much because a lot of my extended family is in Ontario, as well as my sister-in-law's family. And the healthcare situation, it's such a big topic. Some people say you have to wait too long for things. And here you don't have to wait.
Oh, you have to wait here.
Well, not as long.
I mean.
Oh, lately, yeah.
Yeah, good luck. Takes months to get in for something.
But sometimes if something is like takes us months, it could potentially take them almost a year. I will say from personal experiences and my relatives, I know that if something is like scary and super time sensitive, they get you in. They really do.
Right.
But what's interesting is we were talking about this recently, like my brother and I and my parents, and we were kind of musing on the fact that it kind of depends on your values when it comes down to it. Because there you might wait a little longer, but it's because people care enough that every last person have the ability to have healthcare. Whereas here, the reason people like it is because they can get in fast. And if you have enough money, you get what you want. But it's at the expense of other people.
That's shitty. To me, I think it's really shitty.
It is, but that's how we live. And I'm not saying that we sit around thinking about that. Like, no. Oh, I'm glad, the people in that neighborhood don't have health insurance. But that is the reality of it. That's why we have more healthcare opportunities here, because some of the people don't. Is that too depressing?
No. I mean, I guess you're just, speaking facts, but I don't know. We went from like talking about like gender stuff to 90-day fiance to health insurance. So I'm like a little confused. What's happening here? But that's okay. I'm just rolling. I'm just listening.
So one of the reasons I wanted to talk about 90-day fiance in the same vein as like the gender and gender roles and cultural norms that way is because of all the huge cultural differences between these couples, these two people that are meeting up on 90-day fiance. And it causes such drama. And I just don't even know why they're trying to do it.
Why even bother? Right. Why even bother if we have so many cultural differences? I mean, it's already hard enough, when someone's on the same page as you, or you can communicate properly, but then to have all these cultural differences, I mean, that's just adding fuel to the fire to try to understand someone, and they're never going to understand you, and you're never going to understand them because you're just so different. I mean, you're just, yeah.
Well, and these cultural things, I really like to try to be open-minded and not think of my opinion as like always the right one. And just be open-minded to changing my opinion. But, there are countries where it's what we would call kind of like Victorian values, where you don't, like, women stay home, men make money. I was watching some episodes in Russia. It's actually really, really uncommon for the father to be at the hospital or definitely in the room when his baby's being born.
Really?
You have to get special permission to go in. Oh. So sometimes they're going in because they're trying to translate between the doctor and the person giving birth.
Oh.
And seems a little confusing. There's some of that old school stuff where someone takes care of the baby 24/7 and somebody makes money and then just plays with the kid.
Right.
But I get it because I'm quite a feminist, but I think in an ideal situation, you would be sharing those things. Or there's chores or whatever. But, how do you give someone a hard time if everyone they know and how they grew up, everything they've ever seen is that way? Like, they're just looking at it from that way. And it's not that they're unevolved. They just haven't seen anything different.
Right. So based on like the episodes you're watching, that's a huge issue.
Yeah. Well,
some people.
If I'm just thinking of it in terms of the people I'm thinking of, like a female who's dating a male from a culture where he doesn't ever change diapers, for example. And it's not that he's a bad person, but also like, why is she expecting him to automatically know that that's what she wants? Because it seems like people will bend, but there's all these things like people get upset that someone doesn't know what they want.
That's why you got to communicate. And even then it's still difficult.
Yeah. Oh, and the people in Russia and Ukraine, when Americans date them, I keep seeing this over and over, and I just want to like scratch my eyes out. It's like these American people wanting their fiance, who's either Russian or Ukrainian, which there's probably other countries, those are just the two I'm thinking of right now, where people aren't necessarily warm and fuzzy, and it's cultural.
Yeah, they're very cold. Yeah.
So Americans who are really sensitive, being with somebody who's not sensitive and doesn't see that in anyone around them ever, and then expecting them to somehow adjust and think about their partner's feelings all the time. Like there was this one guy who was like, why don't you say thank you or please to me? And then his Russian fiance was like looking at him like he had horns. She's like, what? And honestly, like even in America, there's such different values. I mean,
of course,
the deep
even
South, ooh, totally different than, you know,
right. It's not
Chicago.
just other, yeah, it's not just other countries. It's even here in Chicago, you know, hey, you grew up South Side, grew up on the North Side, grew up in a more affluent part of town, you grew up in a poorer town, you're going to be different. Your values are different. Everything is different. So you meet someone, you could be even in the same city and things could be so different.
Yeah. So for example, people who grew up in Chicago or New York, and even the suburbs of those places, will have much more in common culturally and ideas and how people live and do things than people who live in or grow up in like Texas or Georgia.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
Then Florida is its own country, technically. They just make up their own rules.
Yeah, kind of, sort of, huh?
But I just want to briefly touch on, like, of course, I don't want to like get too into this, but like the religion thing. So there's tons of religions, right? But if we talk about like Christianity versus Muslim, Buddhist, or atheist, I think of those as kind of like four huge categories. And I keep seeing people who are either atheist or Christian with Muslim men. So usually it's middle-aged white women with a younger guy from a Muslim country, such as like Morocco, Tunisia, those kind of places. And like the differences are staggering. And one in particular,
like what makes them come together, you know?
Honestly, I think it might be like sexual attraction, maybe.
Okay.
But I just can't even believe, like, a Muslim person would have a much easier road of it, even being with someone Christian American, than atheist American. Okay. Because the atheists like have no
beliefs at all.
Right. And so they have no lens to look through.
Okay.
And I mean, I think if you just step back, you'd be like, oh, why? It seems like that'd be better. But especially when people are kind of young and immature. I'm thinking of like an American girl who was dating a guy from Morocco. And she went there and she was so pissed that they couldn't share a bedroom and that he wouldn't like kiss her on the street. But those things are cultural. You can't do them. It's actually like illegal, I believe. So if someone was Christian, though, who might have more traditional values, you know, there's plenty of Christians in America who would not want to share a bedroom, especially if their parents' house, with their fiance until they're married.
Right.
So not that there's a right or wrong, but it's like,
it's just culturally different. That's so just what different. It comes down to. Right.
Yeah. So it's also, I think, part of the comedy of this show is when American people go to foreign countries and don't even learn the culture or the main religion there. And then they get so confused or like angry over things that you don't need to be angry over.
Right. It's just, it is what it is. It's not personal. We're just different. So either you're going to learn to accept it and try to find out how and why and respect your significant other for that, or be out, be like, peace, you know? I mean, it's really that simple.
It is. And I can't even imagine. As I said, you know, dating so many people over the years, I can't imagine that huge of a cultural difference when it's hard enough just getting on the same page with respect and how you treat each other and like some of those basic things, you know? When you're also fighting about, why don't you hug me in the street, you know? And when somebody, either side really, but if an American person thinks that their way is right and the other person's like wrong, because I see a lot of that where they're like, oh, well, your country isn't evolved enough or this or that, but there isn't a right and wrong.
Right. It's just different. It's just different. And I think that's where we as human beings also fail, because we don't know how to just respect other people's upbringings and how they're different. We want to automatically say this is right or wrong. There's no right or wrong per se. There's multiple ways of doing things and what people prefer or not prefer. And until they're exposed to something different, sometimes that's all someone knows, right? So I think a lot of hostility and anger comes from just not knowing and being a little ignorant to things. And I wish people would just be a little bit more open-minded, to the stuff and understand like this. Just respect someone for who they are. If you want to try to understand them better and get to know their culture, or, people are so quick to just throw, jabs to say, well, you're wrong and we're more evolved and you're not, or whatever it is. It's just everybody's always trying to fight nowadays. It drives me nuts.
It's true. Yeah. And sometimes when people don't understand the other culture, they start taking everything personally.
Right.
Like this girl in particular, I think at first she didn't believe him and thought he just didn't want to kiss her in public because he wasn't proud to be with her.
Oh.
Which is like really, I mean, come on, read about a country where you go there for a month or 7.
Yeah, that's a little insecure on her part.
That's sort of the end of what I had to say.
Okay, well, 90-day fiance, done and done. Great.
All right, so thanks so much for joining us. And next week, we are going to talk about our absolute favorite hair tools and products. Thanks for listening.
Thanks. Bye.
If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe or follow. And please leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Lastly, follow us on social media for clips of past and future episodes. All our accounts are listed in the show notes below. Thanks so much for listening.